Here we have a straight line given to us in what's called the intercept form. And it's worth keeping in mind that a straight line can come at you in this form of y equals mx plus c, or in this straight line form of something x plus something y equals something else. Now keep in mind, the book call this number c, but it's not the y-intercept. So we need to be really, really careful when we're given this number that we don't interpret it as the y-intercept. So essentially, we're going to need to sketch this, but the first thing we need to do is we need to state the intercepts. And here's where you need to use some important information. The x-intercept is where y equals 0. And you need to write that down to make sure the examiner knows that you know what you're doing. And then what you'll do is you'll substitute y equals 0 into the equation. So my equation, which is 3y plus 6x equals 9. We're going to now substitute y equals 0 in. So this y will become 0. And if that becomes 0, then this whole thing, 3 times 0 equals 0. So it would be 3 times 0 plus 6x equals 9. And 3 times 0 is 0. So therefore 6x equals 9. Now I can either solve this by algebra, or else I can go to my calculator and I can type 6x equals 9 and then solve that interactively. So interactive equation, solve for x, and it tells me x equals 1.5. So I'll do a little green arrow to show that I use the calculator for that, and I say therefore x equals 1.5. And seeing that's the x-intercept, I could write that as 1.5 and 0, and I've got that in coordinate form, and that is the preferred way to write that. Now, the next part of this is to find the y-intercept. And if y equals 0 for the x-intercept, then x equals 0 for the y-intercept. So I'm going to write y-intercept, therefore x equals 0. And I'm going to do the same thing. So my equation that was 3y plus 6x equals 9, I'm now going to replace the x with a 0. So therefore I'm going to get 3y plus 6 times 0 equals 9. And therefore 3y equals 9. So for this, y will equal 3. And therefore my coordinate, and remember we always want to put them in coordinate form, my coordinate for the y-intercept will be at 0, 3. So now I know my x-intercept and my y-intercept. So now let's sketch this baby. What we're going to do is we're going to get our axes that are of course always beautifully ruled. We're going to get out our pencil and we're going to make sure after we've ruled our axes that we label them. So this is going to be y and this is going to be x. And always do that. You don't want to lose a mark that you can avoid losing. Then we know that it passes through an x-intercept of 1.5, so that might be somewhere around about here, and a y-intercept of 3. So with my ruler, I'm going to rule a straight line that goes through a y-intercept of 3 and an x-intercept of 1.5. And it'll probably look something like that. Then I'm going to label my intercepts. Here's my y-intercept at 0, 3. Here's my x-intercept at 1.5 and 0. And now I have that beautifully labeled. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the equation of the graph. So that's 3y plus 6x equals 9. And there we have it. We've stated both our intercepts here and we've sketched our graph beautifully, made sure it was ruled, and everything is absolutely wonderful. Now the last thing to keep in mind is these two are both straight lines. I have y equals mx plus c, or something x plus something y equals something. And I can actually find out what this graph would be in terms of y equals mx plus c. Now the question doesn't ask you to do this, but I'd like you to know how to do this. I go to the calculator here and I'm going to write the equation that I'm given. So 3y plus 6x equals 9. Then I'll highlight that and I'll solve it. So here we go, highlight, interactive, equation, equality, and solve. And I solve it for y. And that means it's going to tell me y equals something. Then I hit OK, and it tells me the answer here is y equals negative 2x plus 3. I'm just going to write that down. So this equation here is y equals negative 2x plus 3. Now, if we know our mx+c format, we know our gradient is negative 2. This line is going downhill. As I go left to right, it goes downhill, which means it's a negative gradient. So we've got that bit right. It also tells me my y-intercept is 3. And here is my y-intercept of 3. So it tells me I've got that right. And therefore, my interpretation of this line given to me in intercept form as an mx+c form seems to be a pretty good interpretation of what's going on. And you can always use this solve command for a line in intercept form to get the mx+c form.